right, we can go ahead and get started for our session today. So, hi everyone, welcome in. We're really excited to have our session today, and we do have a very special guest joining us. So, I'm going to give a brief introduction and I will pass it over to our guest. So please welcome me in joining Dr. Howell. Dr. Howell is a professor at Penn State University. Dr. Howell brings a deep passion for science and education. He also has a strong background in biochemistry, microbiology, and cell biology. So we're super excited to have him today. So let's all welcome him to have him bring his insight, knowledge, and I'm here to answer your questions. So now I will pass it over to Dr. Howell to share his stories.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Nice to see you. So all of you are high school students, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And all of you are interested in biomedical sciences or other kinds of sciences in order to pursue careers in medicine or biomedical research. Is that true of most of you? Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to share my story, talk about how I got to where I am in my career. And then along the way, I'll talk about some of the research that I've done just to give you a flavor for the kinds of work that I've done, which, I thought was exciting. Maybe hopefully you'll think it's exciting too. And anytime, I'll try to keep one eye on chat down there in the corner. So if you have questions, you can pipe up in chat. It's easy so I get excited when I'm talking about my stuff. So if I miss something in chat, by all means, just turn on your mic. Are you allowed to do that? Turn on your mic and just say, "Hey, I got a question." Please interrupt me, is what I'm saying. Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to, yeah, so that's me. I'm at Penn State. And here's my story. Here's how to get a job like mine. Okay. Everybody at your stage, my son is 17. He's going to be starting college in, a year, going into his senior year. And so everybody your age kind of has this idea of what their future looks like. But your future really looks like this. There's not one path. You're going to make zigs and zags. And my story is definitely an example of that. Okay. So there is no path. You're going to follow a path, but if you think that you can plan today and have one straight linear path that takes you into the future, you're going to be disappointed. So don't think that. There's no reason to be disappointed about zigging and zagging, changing your mind. There's no shortcut to find out what the thing you love is, but to try things and then quit doing the things that you don't love. Okay. So you've probably heard this quote, life is what happens when you're making other plans. Well, a lot of life happened to me. I was born in 1970, so I'm old. There's a puppy in this room. Would you like to say hi to her? Come here, Ginger. Come here. No? Okay, good girl. Maybe she'll come say hi at the end. So I'm old, and I grew up in this little town in Ohio called Painesville. How many of you are from the east of the Mississippi anyway, living in North America right now?
I'm
Right,
from
just
North
right.
Carolina.
What's
So,
that? You're from North
North Carolina,
Carolina?
yes, it's the East Coast.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I grew up in this little town in Ohio. And I ended up living in Japan for a little while. And then I ended up so when I was so I started college in Pittsburgh at a place called Carnegie Mellon. And then I spent a year in Japan, and then I lived in San Diego, California at the beginning of grad school. And then I finished grad school at Berkeley, and then I ended up back in Pennsylvania, right in the middle. The Penn State, the main campus is right in the middle of the geographic center of Pennsylvania. So that's the that's the short version of the story. In 1983, I got my first computer, and this was back when there were very few hobbyists who liked to play with computers, and I loved to play with my Commodore 64. And I was really lucky because that led to me in high school getting a job writing computer programs for what today would be called a tech startup. A small company that had a new product that they were trying to, sell in the world. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And if that is going to be true for you too, I really resonate to that because there were a lot of extra challenges from that. And so I'm really passionate about mentoring students who are blazing that trail in their families. And I ended up getting a PhD. And I was lucky that I had these mentors at this startup when I was in high school because both of the founders were PhDs in physics. And before I met those guys, I didn't know what a PhD was, right? So in high school, these are my SAT scores. I got a higher verbal score than math score, and my math score wasn't that great, to tell you the truth. I mean, it was okay, it was good enough. Um, and so in 1988, I so don't be discouraged if your SAT scores aren't as high as you were hoping. So in 1988, that's when I started college at a place called Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and I was doing computer science because I thought that's what I wanted to do, right? I was already making more than my dad was making when I was in high school, writing computer programs, and because he didn't go to college, he had a job that didn't pay so well. So again, those scores wouldn't have been enough, I don't think, for me to get into Carnegie Mellon, but the experience that I had writing code was. But after a couple of years at Carnegie Mellon, I wasn't so sure I wanted to do computer science. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was gonna. And so I it turns out to be a good thing that I had other interests too. I was really interested in Japanese language, and I really wanted to go. The whole reason I went to Carnegie Mellon, besides it being globally preeminent in computer science, was that it had an exchange program with a university in Tokyo that I ended up getting selected for. But I also did a lot of other stuff at Carnegie Mellon. I started out as a news writer for the student newspaper, the Tartan, which was really outstanding. I wasn't as good as the rest of the editorial board. I mean, we had really super talented students on that paper. But it meant that I got a lot of writing and editing experience. I ended up being the assistant news editor and then the news editor. Now, this was all a volunteer thing, but and I did it just for giggles, I thought it was fun, but it turned out to be super important for my career. Not that well, actually did write a few articles later in my career, but I didn't end up becoming a science journalist, but having those skills was really helpful. So by about 1990, I got back so I was accepted to study in Tokyo at a place called Keio University, actually the oldest university in Japan. And that was a really great experience in a lot of ways. But when I got back, it was a strange thing. When I was studying, I wasn't studying computer science, I was studying Japanese language and living in Tokyo. And that experience of doing such, the immersion in a different culture and really focusing on something that I did really love, um, and it being so hands-on and it being so rewarding, really helped to focus my attention on the fact that I didn't really enjoy computer science that much, and that it really wasn't going to be worth it for me to finish that degree because it wasn't something that I loved enough. And I really credit that time uh, in another country studying something else in such an intense way um, to help me realize that I needed to make a change. And so I didn't just change my major, I actually left. I left because there was other stuff going on in my life. It's still hard to talk about actually, but I was having a hard time, and so I left Carnegie Mellon and I worked. First, I wrote code. It was easy for me to get a job doing that, but I hated it. And so I was a dropout for 3 years, a little more, and eventually I ended up being a security guard, making very little money, really hating it. And this was not such a happy time for me. I had friends from Carnegie Mellon who got their degrees and went off and moved to Silicon Valley and became millionaires, or other guys who went to PhD programs and were getting PhDs, right? And in the meantime, you can imagine my mom was tearing her hair out, right? And I was pretty depressed to tell you the truth. But I took my time and I thought it over really carefully. Like, what do I want to do? Um, and for a while, I wasn't ready to go back to college. But after 3 years, so now I'm 24, 25 years old. I don't have a degree. I've been working hard to pay off loans for a university that I don't have a degree from. So it took me a long time to really make up my mind what I wanted to do. And I decided that I wanted to get a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry. But for a long time, I was undecided. For a long time, the reason I took so long is because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into law or if I wanted to go into journalism or if I wanted to study Japanese more. Um, and for a long time, I was kind of leaning towards a career in the humanities until one day I realized, what am I thinking? Like I've always been a nerd. I've always wanted to be a scientist. And this was in the mid 90s, right? And so the thing that really, at the time, looked to me like it was going to have the greatest impact, much more than digital technologies, was biotechnology. And I still stand by that, even though I totally didn't see social media and big tech becoming as important as it is. But I still stand by, pharma and pharmaceuticals and biotech having the most human impact. Well, so now it's 1994, and I went back to school. I transferred all my credits from Carnegie Mellon to the University of Pittsburgh, which it's not really an exaggeration. It was hard for me to find a picture of the University of Pittsburgh campus that didn't have Carnegie Mellon visible because they're basically across a little ravine from each other. They're very close to each other. Um, and I was a returning adult student. Again, I was 24, going to be 25, and so I'm in classes with 17, 18-year-olds which actually was pretty great, but at first I was pretty scared about. And it's another challenge. So this is not to brag, but just statistically speaking, I really beat the odds by going back to college after having been a dropout for 3 years. Okay, and I took everything because I took everything in the catalog because I was so happy to be back in college. Oh my God, I really valued being in college, having been out of college for a long time. And I took French, and I took all of the science courses that I could take. I took extra chemistry courses, and I took extra math and physics courses, and I really spent a lot of effort getting extra lab courses and getting my own project in an actual research lab. So I found a spot in a yeast lab and you might say, well, who cares about yeast? Well, it turns out that all eukaryotic cells. Anybody remember what is a eukaryote? What's a eukaryotic cell? Anybody? Oh, you didn't know there was going to be a quiz, did you? uh, anybody? What's a eukaryote? I got time. This is a diagram of a eukaryote. What's a eukaryotic cell? Here, I will type in chat. What is a eukaryote? What is a eukaryote? Yes, it has a nucleus. Yeah. So, um, cells with nuclei tend to be bigger and they're much more complex, right? They have much more structural complexity, they have much more genomic complexity, et cetera, et cetera. And a yeast is a eukaryotic cell, just like all of your cells are eukaryotic cells. Yes, and so they have membrane-bound organelles, and in fact, that's what I studied in my honors thesis in this yeast lab. Right, so here's another picture of a eukaryotic cell. And yeast cells, it's a kind of fungus, and animal cells, human cells have a number of important differences, but fundamentally they're the same. They have well, you can't really see my pointer here. Actually, let me see if I can change this for a second. Give me a second. Give me a second, and I will see if I can make my hickey do. What's my hickey do? Um, my cursor arrow bigger. How do I make the pointer bigger? Here we go. Here we go. Oh my God, I'm a wizard or something. Yeah, can you see my can you see my little mouse pointer now, right? So there is a nucleus, but there are also all of these things in blue here. Do you see called endoplasmic reticulum? Who's heard of endoplasmic reticulum before? Well, you all have heard of endoplasmic reticulum, and you know that that's where the rough ER, the rough endoplasmic reticulum is. And so it really looks like this. Okay. So this big thing here is the nucleus. And then you can see some mitochondria here, which, as we all know, are the, say it with me, powerhouse of the cell. And you see all of these little pancakes stacked up together. That's endoplasmic reticulum. And you notice almost all of it is rough endoplasmic reticulum because if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see all of these ribosomes on the rough ER. Um, Sorry. Je regrette, mais je pense que je ne pas peux faire en français. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, so it turns out that at the rough endoplasmic reticulum, that's where secretion happens. Okay. And so you see down here, stuff is being secreted. Okay. And the reason it's being secreted down here is because the ribosomes on the rough ER here will secrete things into the lumen, the inside of the endoplasmic reticulum, which will then bud off into vesicles. And when those vesicles fuse with the plasma membrane, then the contents get released to the external environment outside the cell. And so you might say, why would you study yeast for the love of God? Who cares about yeast? Well, if you care about beer or champagne, you care about yeast. If you care about bread, you care about yeast. But also, if you care about insulin and diabetes, you care about yeast because it turns out that this mechanism by which yeast secrete uh, proteins is the same way that your pancreatic cells secrete insulin. So it's hard to study this in humans, and it's easy to study it in yeast. And that's why we used yeast. And so I had a project that looked at secretion that was very much relevant to insulin and diabetes. Okay. Also, cystic fibrosis. Okay, this is the lungs of a patient who has cystic fibrosis, and you can see all of this. Those lungs aren't healthy, and the reason that those lungs aren't healthy is because of a defect in protein translocation, which is very much like secretion. It's basically you could think of it as a secretion defect. Okay. And so there's all kinds of relevant. So this is why we do basic research because things that we learn about how eukaryotic cells work in yeasts apply to all kinds of human diseases. Okay. So right around this time, there was this new thing called the World Wide Web. And people were making, this was in the mid 90s, okay, 94, 95, 96, and people were making a lot of money, okay? And I was making a lot of money. It's almost embarrassing to say this now, but back at the very beginning of the web, people like me who it was brand new, and so I didn't have any skills, but I just faked it, right? And I was good enough to get the job done, and people were paying me. Big companies were paying me. Endometriosis. We could talk about, email me and we'll talk about endometriosis. That's pretty cool. Um, Big companies were paying me $100 an hour. I'm talking about 1995 dollars an hour to make websites. Okay. I know, right? Um, and so the lady that I was dating back then, who's my wife now, with whom I have a couple of kids, and is just a couple of rooms over from here. And I've had 30 odd years of happiness with. She was like, "What are you doing?" Right? She was a graduate student in the lab across the hall, and she was like, "You need to have your head examined, Krekka, because like, what are you doing, giving up all this money in this career to do dumb science?" And I was like, "Okay, listen. First of all, this is a gold rush. Like, this is going to end, which it did, right? And in fact, there was a crash, right? It was a bubble, and the tech bubble burst, and a lot of people lost their jobs, and I could see that coming. And anyway, I already knew that I hated writing code, and I really loved doing science." And I wouldn't have been able to stay in this career. That it was clear that it wasn't sustainable, and I didn't love it. And so I never regretted making the decision of putting this behind me. Okay. So in 1998, I finally got a bachelor's degree. Notice it was 10 years after I started college. It took me 10 years to get a degree. I worked for a bunch of years, and I had to start over when I started in my molecular genetics degree. And look, my career recovered. My mom was tearing her hair out, and it worked out for me. I also, this still surprises me, but I found somebody who liked me enough who wanted to, get married and have a family. That happened around the same time I graduated. Yeah, so after I went back to college, it was a much happier time. And so she and I made a deal. Remember, we were in Pittsburgh at the time, and I decided to go to California for graduate school. And she said, "Okay, I will follow you to California for to do a postdoc while you get your PhD. But then I'm going to go on the job market first, and when I come back east, I want you to follow me, and we'll get married." And I said, "Okay," and that worked out really well. That worked out really well. So I started at University of California, San Diego, which yes is right on the beach. Well, there's actually a cliff here, so you have to ride down this road with switchbacks. I mean, I'm on my bike. On my bike, I used to ride my bike down the cliff and swim with the sharks in the morning when the sun was coming up, and then ride my bike. I couldn't climb that hill today if my life depended on it. And ride back and go to the lab. It was San Diego is a pretty nice place to go to school. But the guy whose lab I was working in and supervising my PhD decided to move to Berkeley. And so I ended up moving. But when I was in San Diego, I worked on this fish called zebrafish. Because it's a vertebrate, and so it has a brain, right? And so what you're seeing here, so this is the retina of a zebrafish, and here, let me move this so I can point. So here is the brain, and here's the forebrain, and the things at the top that are glowing, those are the nostrils, and then here's the other retina, and so all the cells in the retina make projections. You know that in the brain, right? You make contralateral projections, right? So like your right hand is controlled by the left side of your brain. And the same goes for sensory systems. So the left retina makes projections to the right side of the brain, and the right retina makes projections to the left side of the brain. And so you can trace those projections. If you can label the cells in the retina with fluorescent dyes, you can watch their axons make synapses on the other side of the brain in 3 dimensions. And so this is just another three, right? So, this retina here is making projections all the way to the other side, to that part of the brain. So why study?
Oops, I think he got cut off. Let's give him another few minutes and then let's see. And then later after his presentation, you guys will have a chance to ask questions and then unmute. So um, for now, you can just listen and then make sure to jot down your questions so you can ask by the end of the presentation.
Really, if you don't mind, I have a question for you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Will you be able to share his email?
Yes, so this depends on Dr. Howell. So I will ask him if he's willing to share his email at the end of the presentation. And if it's yes, then he will probably post it in the chat. So you can email him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
hmm
And will we have time to ask you questions about the project that's
Yes.
tomorrow, like the Spotify project, I believe?
Yes. So please keep all the questions about for me or for the summer camp after we finish with Dr. Howell. So you're gonna have time at the very end of the
Okay.
today's session to ask your questions. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
hmm Okay, let's just give Dr. Howell a few more minutes and if he can join back. Okay, how about this? While we're waiting for him, if you have any questions for me, you can go ahead and ask about the project, about your certificate, or anything about the summer camp. Yes, go ahead.
So like you know how there's like a reflection form for like the guest speaker,
hmm
like for the thank you, like is that mandatory this year or no?
No, it's optional. So if you wanted to just like give appreciation to the guest speaker and get a 30 minutes extra service hour, then you can do that, but it's not required.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, Queen.
Um, for the certificates, will we get them DM'd personally, or how will we get our certificates at the end of the
Yes.
program?
So we'll likely send out the certificate if you qualify next week, and then we'll email you personally. So you get a PDF attachment. Yeah. In the chat, where's the link? So if you go to YouTube and search up Global Science and Medicine, you will be able to find our channel, and then every single recording of the session is posted on our channel. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I have another question
Yes.
about like the recommendation letter. Since like
Wait, sorry. Actually, I think Dr. Howard just joined the waiting room. So how about you save the question and we'll answer it later. Okay. Let's see.
Hello.
Oh, Dr. Howell.
Can you
Hi.
see me?
Yes, you're good. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Um, Sorry, we seem to have got disconnected. In order to apologize, I've given you a puppy
Oh,
prize.
so
This is
cute.
Ginger Howell. Okay, sorry that happened. Oh yes. Oh, do you love your daddy the most? What's the last thing you heard me say?
You were saying why we should study zebrafish, I believe.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Place. Come on. Come on down. Good girl. Good puppy. Good puppy. She's such a good puppy, except she's not. Okay. I'm trying to find my. Where is. Oh, right. I remember. Here we go. Okay. So can you see me? And can you see me talking about? Sorry. I need to. So I was frantically trying to get back on, and I finally got it to work. Yeah, so it's just like with the yeast. Okay. Um, the reason we study these so-called model organisms is because it's difficult or ethically impossible to study these questions in humans, but we can study them in yeast and we can study them in other vertebrates. And it turns out that all of the genes that are required for secretion in yeast are the same genes that are required in all eukaryotes to do secretion. And the genes that are required to for neurons in your retina to make projections to the rest of your brain are the same in humans and in zebrafish. Okay, so it's 2000, and like I told you already, that was the year I got married, and that was the year that my uh uh advisor, my PhD advisor, moved to Berkeley, and so I moved there too, and ended up getting a PhD from Berkeley. And I also switched projects. So this is Caenorhabditis elegans. It is not a vertebrate, it is an invertebrate. It is a soil nematode. It is microscopic. This is it under a microscope. And from this end to this end is about 1 millimeter. Okay. So if you're from the United States, a millimeter is about the thickness of a dime, okay, of a 10-cent coin. So this is a very small. In fact, I mean, if you look closely, you can see individual cells here. Okay, that's how small it is. And here it is doing one of its few behaviors. It's laying eggs. So you can see in the body, there are these eggs here, right? So you can see these eggs, okay? But there's also, it just laid a couple of eggs, all right? And so basically, what does this thing do? Well, it moves forward, it moves backward, it poops, it eats, and it lays eggs, okay? And it turns out that it doesn't even need to have sex. It doesn't. So these things are hermaphrodites, and so right here in this reproductive organ, it makes both eggs and sperm, and it can self-reproduce. Its own sperm and its own eggs can make an egg and make another individual. So it makes genetics really easy. Its generation time is 3 days. In zebrafish, the generation time is 3 months. Okay. So, and it takes a lot of work to get zebrafish larvae to grow into adults. It doesn't take any work at all to have one of these eggs grow into an adult, and that takes 3 days. Okay. Well, and it turns out that all of this egg laying behavior is so you can see there is uh, a neuron called an HSN on the right side, R, and left side, L. And so these neurons, when they fire, that makes the vulva. The vulva is the organ that allows an egg to come out. So there are just a couple of muscles that will contract in order for an egg to pop out. Okay, and so the entire this entire behavior of egg laying is totally controlled by two neurons. Okay, HSN on the right side, HSN on the left side. And where are they born? Well, they are not born where they end up being. So the HSN you see is right in the middle of the animal, the mother, right by the vulva, but it is born in the tail of the embryo, uh, right after the egg starts to grow. And this neuron is born in the tail and migrates through the developing body until it gets where it goes. So it's born right at the tail, the what we call the posterior end, and it moves anteriorly, that is towards the head, right to the middle. Okay. And it turns out that in your brain, you guys know about, I mean, you might know a little bit about neuroscience. You know that there are neurons, some neurons are excitatory and some neurons are inhibitory. Okay. And an excitatory neuron, if it fires an action potential, then other neurons that it's synapsed onto are more likely to fire. That's excitatory. But inhibitory neurons, if they fire, then the neurons that they've synapsed onto are less likely to fire. So they're inhibitory neurons. And your brain is full of millions, billions of hundreds of billions of inhibitory neurons. And all of them were born on the anterior end of your the embryo that became you, and all of them migrated forward through your embryonic self to get through the spinal cord to get into your brain. Okay, and so you see where I'm going with this, right? This migration from the posterior towards the anterior, we hypothesized that it was controlled by the same genes that control it in mammalian neuronal development, and we were right. Okay, and so in my PhD, I was able to show that those genes were necessary and sufficient that they controlled the process of migration from the tail to the position where these neurons actually function. And it turned out right around the same time that others showed that it happens in rats and that it happens in, eventually it turned out to be true in zebrafish as well and in all the vertebrates. So probably, I mean, the most likely hypothesis is that the very first animals, the ancestors of vertebrates and invertebrates, used those genes, they're called Wints, used the Wnt genes to control migration from the back end of an animal to the front in all of the neurons of all of the animals. Okay. And so that was pretty interesting work, and it was quite satisfying to be able to show that. Okay. And again, why study worms? Why study soil nematodes? Well, because the genes that control neuronal development in those animals also control neuronal development in humans. Okay. So in 2005, after, remember, I started college in 1988. Okay. In 2005, I got my PhD. And that was also the year that my wife finished her postdoctoral fellowship and started looking for jobs in Pennsylvania. So, my family are here and her family are here. And so we wanted to get jobs here, somewhere where we could travel to both because our parents were going to become grandparents soon. At least we hoped that they were. And so we wanted to find, a place where we could be close to our families. So she interviewed for a bunch of jobs, and my plan was to follow her back. Okay. And so she got a job right here in Lock Haven, where she still is a professor. And I got a job down here in State College. And this is where Penn State is, and that's where she got her bachelor's degree. That's where she went to college. And so she came back from the interview at Lock Haven, uh, came home to Berkeley and said, they're going to offer me this job, and I think I'm going to take it, and we are going to live in State College. And I said, that sounds like a plan. And that's what we did. And that was in 2005. So for the first year we were here, I taught at Lock Haven with her. Lock Haven was very generous and gave me a job. But it was pretty clear that it was only going to be for a year, that there wasn't going to be a permanent position. I was so grateful to have that job because I couldn't wait to start teaching, and I didn't have a lot of teaching experience, and um, so that was a great experience. But then at the end of that year, I was thinking about what to do next, and I actually considered a career in science journalism. I would very much prefer to have been, teaching college, but I didn't know if there was going to be a job like that. So I actually wrote a few stories for the local newspaper about, research that was happening mostly at Penn State. Um, well, and that helped me to get a job in 2006 to get a job at Penn State. I got a faculty position, so I was doing some teaching, but mostly I was doing a lot of academic advising and program administration stuff. But eventually, and you've probably heard of Penn State because of it has one of the biggest stadiums on earth. It's the second biggest American football stadium in North America. Yep, it holds more than 100,000 people. And so it's a pretty big school. I teach pretty big classes. I've taught in this room actually, not with that many students in there, but I have taught in there. But I also teach some fairly small classes. I teach an English class about science in literature. And, there's 20, 25, 30 students in that class. Yeah, and I enjoy both. I enjoy teaching small discussion classes, and I also enjoy being, on stage way down at the bottom, getting all of that attention. So, and I've been teaching courses like this for 19 years now, and I really love what I do. Um, and I've done a little bit of research about origin of life and life on other planets. So, in the time we have left, I'm sorry we had to lose some time with me getting cut off. Are there any lessons here for any of you who are trying to get careers like this? Well, if I were to presume to give you advice, it is get a very broad education, right? Learn how to write news, learn how to speak Japanese, learn how to speak French. Learn how to learn a bunch of things. Follow your nose to all the things you love because you never know which of those is going to be important later. There's incredible pressure to specialize, especially when you get to a PhD. And for me, it's been very rewarding and I think has helped in my success to resist specialization, right? I studied yeast, I studied vertebrates, I studied invertebrates. I did a bunch of other projects that I didn't list here, right? And I think that helped me in my career. So I teach a wide range of courses. I teach courses in microbiology, in biochemistry, in molecular and cell biology, immunology, toxicology. I've taught molecular medicine. I'm going to teach again this fall. I teach a gen ed for non-science majors about evolution. And I teach this course, Science and Literature, I told you about, and I've taught a course called Science and Media. Done a wide range of research, right? So, done some biochemistry, done some cell biology, quite a bit of neuroscience, a lot of development, quite a lot of genetics. And I've done recently, in the past few years, some astrobiology and origin of life stuff. So let's review, okay? I did computer science, I did writing, I did languages, I did biology, neuroscience. I transitioned from research to teaching. I was affiliated with five institutes of higher learning. And so there were a lot of times when I felt like a failure, especially when I was a dropout. And there were a lot of things that didn't work out for me, things that I started and then quit. Okay. I started college early, right? I thought I was hot shit, and then I was a dropout for 3 years. It took me 10 years to finish. It took me extra time to get my PhD because, I moved, I got married, and the lab moved, and I lost a lot of time just helping to move the lab from San Diego to Berkeley. And I got my first real job, when I was 35 years old. So how to get a job like mine? The most important thing to remember is that there isn't one path. Okay, you're gonna zig and you're gonna zag. All right, there's no way to make that plan. I do you know why I teach at Penn State? Because I followed my wife to Pennsylvania, right? And that was the job that I found, and it turned out to be perfect for me. I love it here, but I didn't. It wasn't like when I was 18 years old. I was thinking I'm gonna orient everything in my life so that I can work at Penn State. That wouldn't have worked. Okay. So there's going to be setbacks, and I sound like your old uncle now, don't I? There's going to be setbacks, and there's going to be opportunities, but you have time. Okay, I'm starting to, that sounded too much like I'm your uncle. All right. So in the time that's left, I'm going to show you part of a talk that I gave at NASA. My brother, he's kind of a nerd too. He wasn't too impressed when I got a PhD. He wasn't too impressed when I learned to speak Japanese. He was really impressed when I got invited to give a talk at NASA. So this is a talk that I gave this is part of a talk I gave at NASA. In 1994, NASA came up with a definition of life, and it is a self-sustaining chemical system capable of evolution. And that's actually a pretty good definition, but I thought that it was incomplete. I wanted to refine it a little bit. Okay. So what does self-sustaining mean? It takes energy from the environment, but it continues itself. It's not a computer program, right? So it has a physical manifestation, right? It has chemical structures, right? It's matter. It's not just mathematics. And it's capable of evolution. Over time, it will change, okay? Adapt to its environment and undergo natural selection, okay? And so this is to summarize pretty much the whole talk. I broke this down into five landmarks, not just three criteria, but five landmarks. So you have to have self-sustaining reactions, okay? You have to have something that can sustain itself, okay? But um, you also have to have replicating units. Um, so something that holds these chemical reactions that are sustaining themselves so that they can replicate, so they can make more of themselves. So in our biosphere, self-sustaining reactions are everything that happens that we call biochemistry. And in our biosphere, the replicating units are cells. Okay. And we understand how these work really well. Okay. But we have no idea how they emerged. There used to be on Earth, there was a time on this planet Earth when there was water and when there was dry land, and it didn't look anything like it does today, but the surface was solid, it wasn't lava anymore, and there was water, and there was absolutely no life. And then very soon after that, just maybe tens of millions of years, there were cells. How did those emerge? We don't know. There's no theory for that. Okay. But we do know how those cells evolved after they emerged. So as time went on, those cells got more and more complex. But for about half the history of life, for about the first 2 billion years of life, cells were all prokaryotes. They did not have nuclei. And then sometime fairly suddenly, about 2 billion years ago, suddenly there were eukaryotes. And then not long after that, there were animals and plants and other multicellular organisms. How did that happen? Well, we don't really have a good theory for that either. And then there's two more landmarks. One that I call orthonc, which is an old English word for like clever, okay, or cunning. Um, because I didn't like the word intelligence. Intelligence is just too freighted. We just have too many biases about it. And then there's what we call human intelligence in most of these discussions that I'm calling Sophia. Okay. Orthonc, being able to use tools, it turns out that there's lots of species that can use tools on planet Earth. But there's only one species that made a global economy, that made a global political system, that has technology for, making cell phones and GPS. And so how are we different from, an octopus, which can also use tools, or a dolphin that can also use tools, or a chimp that can also use tools? Well, and so the short version of this is that, well, and I think this is the contribution that I made, and that is that the first two stages, making biochemistry and making something like cells, highly depends on the planetary conditions. Okay, and the rest of them don't depend on planetary conditions. Okay, and what I want to do, since we only have a few minutes left, I'm going to stop here because I want to use the rest of the time to answer your questions. All right. I'm going to stop there and answer your questions. Sorry that we've lost a few minutes with me getting disconnected.
No, you're good. Actually, for questions, if you have more time, we can continue to do like a 20 minutes, 15 minutes Q&A session.
Oh,
But
I got time. Well, and
okay,
Ginger's here.
okay,
Ginger,
great.
where'd you go? Ginger, come. Come here. Come here. Yes. Yes. Oh, it will inspire them to ask questions if you're on the screen, Ginger. Oh, come here. Come on. Oh, are you shy for the camera? You're such a bad puppy. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, her little
Oh,
hertz is it's thumping and thumping.
So cute. Oh my gosh. I also have a cat. His name's Dollar. So yeah, he's
Dollar the cat. Yes, we have three
yep.
cats,
Oh, so cute.
and they're pretty good kitties.
Hmm.
They're really good kitties compared to this bad puppy.
Okay. If anyone have any questions, you can use the raise hand feature, or you can just speak up, and then or you can put it in the chat. All right. Hannah, you can go.
Hi, Dr. Howell. So first, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to
Oh, it's my
come.
pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah. So I'm 14. I just finished like middle school, and I'm interested in so many like subjects and fields. Like I take a robotics class, but also studying endometriosis. So that's kind of like something, and that's like a whole other thing. And I'm also interested in languages, but in Egypt, you have to like specialize in 11th grade or something. So I have like two years maybe to think about what I want to do really. And the
Hmm.
thing is, here in Egypt, you can't change your mind in college. You literally can't. So if I choose like math or something in 11th grade, I have to take like a course in college that relates to math. So like engineering, computer science, that type of stuff. If I choose science, I have to, go into something that's in science, and I can't choose, and I can't like change my mind later. I've kind of been overwhelmed by that idea. So, what do you think I should do here?
Um, I'm just thinking out loud here. Have you considered, so your English is impeccable. Do you go to the American school or something?
No, I'm actually in a government like school.
I see. Um, uh, I mean, I'm just being nosy, curious. How is it that you speak English indistinguishably from US native?
Oh, okay. So I kind of don't know. I just kind of grew up watching a lot of English movies like Netflix, cartoons, and stuff like that. I've actually never been to an English-speaking country, but
Wow.
it's just that I kind of grew up watching English cartoons, and I guess that's what made me like be able to speak English that well.
So all the rest of you, just raise your hands, or type in chat. How many of you are like Hannah here, who you've never been to an English speaking country, but you speak good English because of Hollywood? Yeah, so quite a few of you. Well, more of you anyway. Yeah, interesting.
Social media has a
Interesting.
big impact.
So, I'm just thinking out loud. Have you considered going to college in Canada or the US or
I
Australia or
actually have. I actually have.
I
And
mean,
I've been kind
that's easier said than done because that's going to be I would bet my life. I don't know anything about the education system in Egypt, and I don't know anything about your family. Some families are, have more resources than others. I have no idea if it's realistic for any of you to be just like, well, I'll just go to the US, and study. Um, well, and
that's cool.
it's becoming more difficult and well, if I'm honest, scary for foreign
Yeah.
students to come to the United States to study. But Canada's not that bad. I don't know. I mean, if that's possible for you,
Yeah.
then I mean that just gives you a whole different set of challenges and opportunities. But what it'll do is it'll make it so that, especially in the US, also in Canada, you'll have more choices. And if you're, 2 years into a program
Mm.
studying material science and you realize that you really love chemistry, or, 2 years into a physics program and you realize you really love astronomy, you can change it sounds like much more easily at a university abroad than a university in Egypt.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
so what were you going to say, Hannah?
I actually forgot, so you can continue. I actually forgot.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Um, well, and so again, I know that in many countries there's
Mhm.
much less flexibility in your curriculum. Once you choose a subject of study, you're really kind of committed to it.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that, if you're in an engineering program, you can still be in, a poetry club, or you can still be in a chess club, or you can
Yeah,
still pursue those things outside
yeah,
of your academic life. Well, and
yeah.
look at me, right? In 2 weeks, I'm going to turn 55. You're going to live a long time, There's
Yeah.
time for you to make mistakes. There's time for you to pursue something and then realize it isn't perfect for you. And there's going to be years and years of your life where you can change careers and again, that kind of mobility is something that people who live in the US take for granted. And I know that in other countries there's less of that, but it's still not zero. I don't know. I think,
Yeah.
well, and above all, you shouldn't let yourself. I mean, you said you're 14. You're just about to start high
Yeah.
school. My daughter,
Yeah.
I'm pointing this way because down this hallway is my daughter's bedroom. My daughter just turned 14 and she's going to start her first year of high school in, 3 weeks.
Mm.
And she doesn't have any idea what she wants to do with her life. And if she was in a system like Egypt sounds like, where you have to choose and you can't change your mind, that would paralyze her, right? And so I'm
Mm.
sorry that you're in that position. But in fact, I think that in the long run, you probably have more choices than it appears. And in the long run, you have time to make mistakes and recover from those mistakes and have your career recover from them. So if I were to presume to give you advice, like your old uncle with the white beard, it would be just relax. Just don't get too anxious about it. You're
Yeah.
14. It's you're 14. And
Yeah.
if
I
you
simply just
if
don't
you
want.
feel like you can't make up your mind right now, that's
Yeah.
totally normal. Don't feel bad.
Yeah. Thank you. I just don't want my 30-year-old self to like hate my 15 or 14-year-old self. So that's something to take into consideration.
Well,
Yeah,
best
but
of
thank
luck
you
to
for your
you.
advice. Yeah, thank you for your advice. I'll definitely consider like abroad for
You're
more
welcome.
flexibility. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Next up, Julia, you can go.
Hi. My question is, did, what lesson do you think is most important to teach your student? Could be about anything.
Oh, that's a really great question. What's the most important thing that I try to teach my students? Um, to ask to ask why, to make sure you understand. Okay. So everybody turn on your mics and say it with me. The mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell, right? Everybody can do it. What does that mean? Who can tell me what it means that the mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell? What do mitochondria do, and why do we say that they're the powerhouse of the cell? It synthesizes ATP, creates energy ATP. Well, it doesn't create energy, but it transduces energy. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it takes here. I'm gonna draw here. It takes glucose and it makes ATP. Okay. So glucose has a lot of chemical potential energy, right? If you take glucose, you can light it on fire and it's a fuel, right? It'll burn, it'll oxidize. Um, so it has a lot of chemical potential energy. And ATP is another molecule that has a lot of chemical potential energy. And the cell, it turns out that glucose, each molecule of glucose has something like 30 times more chemical potential energy than each ATP molecule does. And so it would be very inefficient to use glucose directly. It's much more efficient to take each glucose and use its energy to synthesize 30 or so ATPs. And now you've got 30. It's like using nickels instead of dollars, right? Like you don't want to get change every time, so you just spend a nickel to buy something that costs a nickel. Am I making sense at all with this dumb metaphor? So the point is, why do you use ATP and why do you use glucose and um how does it go from ATP to glucose and which enzymes are involved and how are they regulated and why are they regulated that way? And these kind of details. It's easy to memorize the details, right? How many of you have heard about glycolysis? And how many of you have heard about pyruvate? I mean, depending on what age you are, you might have heard of these and maybe not yet. How many of you have heard of the electron transport chain and ATP synthase and all of these steps in mitochondrial respiration? Well, what I find over and over again is that students finish really strong high school programs in the United States. Maybe they've taken the AP or the IB exam in, biology, biochemistry. And so they know all of these details. They've memorized all of these molecular mechanisms in lots of details. But if I say, what does it mean that the mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell? They don't know. They can't answer that question. And so that's the most important skill. Do you understand what I'm saying? Um, Julia, am I saying your name right? Julia, um, is to be able to translate between details and explanations and really show that you understand by connecting everything together. Okay. And the reason that it's hard to get that skill and that most students, at least in the United States, most students learn that skill when they get to college, is because in high school, the focus in science classes tends to be on the focus tends to be on memorizing vocabulary, right? Um, because there's so much vocabulary, there's no shortcut. But at some point, you have to learn how to take all the details and all the vocabulary items that you've committed to memory and understand how they all fit together. And that's much harder. And so that's a more important skill. Does that answer your question? I hope
Yes.
so. I hope so. Awesome. Wonderful.
Okay, great. Next up, Queen, you can go.
First, I want to say thank you, Sal, for the wonderful presentation. I
You're
learned a
welcome.
lot. You mentioned that study runs can help us understand the human genes and the brain. Have there been any specific discoveries from worm genetics that have directly impacted your understanding or treatment of humans with neurological diseases like strokes or Parkinson's disease?
Oh my God, there's so many examples. I don't know all of them, but much of the understanding of insulin, actually, it turns out that worms have it's different endocrinology, but it's analogous endocrinology. They use hormones they have a hormone that's very much similar to insulin that they use for similar kinds of things. Um, there's a lot known about everything that we know. So you've heard of programmed cell death, right? You know that cells during development will undergo programmed cell death. Cells that are tumorous or cancer cells or pre-cancer cells, pre-tumor cells. It turns out that your immune system can look how much attention this puppy needs. Your immune system is going through your right immune cells, white blood cells, right? They're crawling through all of your all of your lymph nodes and through all of your they're in your circulatory system, but they actually can leave the lymph nodes, leave the circulatory system, and crawl through your tissues. And of course, they're looking for viruses, they're looking for bacteria, but they can detect your own cells, host cells, that have viral infections. And they can detect your own cells, host cells, that have mutations that can lead to cancer. And when they find those cells, they signal to those cells to undergo programmed cell death, to self-destruct. And they do. And that's one of the ways that your immune system protects you from viruses and from tumors. And that entire process of programmed cell death was discovered in worms, and almost all of our understanding of it came from studying worms. Worms. Why? Well, because all animals have programmed cell death. Why? Well, because if you have more than one, if you're a multicellular organism, you have to make sure that none of those cells become selfish, right? And grow uncontrolled. That's called a tumor. Okay. And so every multicellular organism has to have something like programmed cell death. And the ancestor of us and worms and of every animal had programmed cell death. And so programmed cell death, which is so important to cancer and immunology, we learned so much about it in worms. And the same goes for so many processes in neuroscience. And I could list lots of other things. And if I really was an expert in worms, which I'm not, I could list even more. But those are some examples that I'll use for now. Yeah. So the answer is more than I can list.
All
What do
right.
you want? What do you
Thank you so
want?
much for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, next up, Rui, you can go.
Hello. Your various very incredibly impressive accolades in your life career, aside from that period you were doing IT, in my eyes were marked by your unwavering motivation towards biology and science overall. And given that, I'm just curious, looking over the arc of your career, was there a particular moment when you were maybe a child or during your undergraduate period that you, I don't know, truly recognized or crystallized your commitment towards science and biology, and make it not only just like a passion, but also, your future profession? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think I understand the question.
Yeah,
Um, まずきっと日本の方ですよ。
あ、そうですね。
確か、梅本くん.
そうですね。
So, somebody in your family was born under a plum tree, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry
Overly,
to embarrass you. So, yeah, so to answer the question, I mean that this is a point that I tried to make in my talk is that yeah, I mean, I hope you can tell, right? That I love teaching. And I didn't think about teaching until I was almost done with the PhD. I hope you can tell that I love well, I mean, you just flattered me by telling me that you can tell that I love biology. And I didn't even think about it until I was 24 and had been a dropout for a few years, right? And so this is my answer to your question. It's also my answer to Hannah's question, even though I'm probably making her feel worse instead of better. When I was 14, I had no idea. I mean, I thought I wanted to just write computer programs for my whole life. And it turns out, you know, 40 years later, yeah, I still enjoy writing computer programs for me. Like when there's something that I need, I'll write a little script to do it, and that's always fun. But if that was my job, well, it was my job, and I hated it. Okay, I hated it. And how did I figure that out? Well, at first, when I was in high school and it was a part-time job, it was awesome. And then when it was like 5 classes a semester, and I wasn't really as good as the other guys, and I didn't really like it as much, and like, there's other stuff, there's more to life than doing this. I had to change my mind, and that happened literally 10 years after I started middle school, you know? So, like I said, there's no shortcut. You just have to try things and until it clicks. I wish there was a shortcut, but there isn't.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
に会話の練習、ありがとうございました。
頑張りましょう。
あ、頑張ります。
Okay, great. Next up, Haifa, you can go.
Thank you, Dr. Howell, for like the great presentation. Like it's actually mind-blowing on like how like well-rounded you are to say in the STEM field. So I'm really like so impressed, honestly.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So like my question is have you ever like delved into like the regulation of genes in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes?
Well, each of those is a huge field. Sorry, I have to let this bad dog out. Each of those is a huge field. Um, I mean, a huge field. Like in my department, there is a center for eukaryotic gene regulation. And there's half a dozen labs that are studying different kinds of gene regulation in different contexts. Well, and in fact, um, changes in gene expression underlie everything, right? When you see a I don't know if you're looking at a milkweed bush and you see a monarch caterpillar, which is this big goopy thing that doesn't look like a monarch butterfly at all. And sometime it's going to make a cocoon, and sometime later out is going to come a monarch butterfly. And what's happening is that in every single one of those cells, in that almost every single cell in that individual, dramatic changes in gene expression are leading to lots of cell death and lots of growth and complete metamorphosis, right? And I have two kids. When they're about 18 months old, they'll sit in the high chair and you'll give them some Cheerios and they'll say ah da da da, right? And then 6, 8 months later, they say more Cheerios. And the difference is changes in gene expression in neurons in their brain. Okay. Cancer is due to changes in gene expression, and the defenses against cancer are due to changes in gene expression. There's nothing that isn't changes in gene expression, right? And so studying those changes just as, at the biological level, but also studying how that regulation takes place, just in terms of biochemistry. Um, all of those, I mean, that's most of what we do in my field in one way or another. So, um, you're correct to identify that as something that's really interesting. But I could never list all of them, right? Because it's you see what I mean when I say it touches everything. And so if you go into biology, you will see it over and over and over again. And you can, depending on what you study, you can choose which parts of the map is so big, you can only follow one little path, at least at the beginning, to try to, so just again, follow your nose to the thing that happens to be the most exciting. If I were if I were to presume to give you advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Haifa.
Great. We're gonna take 5 more questions. Kenzie, you can go.
I want to thank you so much for this presentation. And first of all, I want to tell you that we have a lot of points in common. I'm in a French school, and I have been to China through an exchange program too.
Wow.
And I want to ask you about I'm a high school student, and I'm passionate about medical topics, and I want to go to a medical school. But here in Egypt, labor market required computer science, robotics, programming. But I tried more than once to be involved in programming courses and robotic summer camps, but I thought it was too complicated. So what do you think?
Um, it's really hard
Yeah,
to it's often hard to make yourself fit into the expectations of your society, right? And that can be culturally, it can be politically, it can be in terms of religion, you know. Um, but my hunch is that Egyptian society, I mean, I don't know much about Egypt, but I mean, I have a friend who's an Egyptian scholar who wrote a really good book about Egyptian history. He knows a lot about Egypt, you know, and I get the sense from reading Egyptian history and from listening to you and Hannah that Egyptian society is maybe more rigid than U.S. society, that the expectations are less flexible. But I have a hunch that Egyptian society is big enough to accommodate more than its stereotypes. Do you understand what I'm saying? That
but
if you end up being really good at what you do, you'll find a place. I
yeah,
hope that's true. Now, that might mean that might be really challenging, but it might be worth it for you. I don't know. I mean, I don't know you and I don't know anything about Egypt. I don't know anything about your family. And also, you know, mortals aren't given to see the future, you know?
yeah,
Do you understand what I'm saying? So, let me put it like this. So you said that robots and computers are complicated.
yeah.
And well,
For me,
they're not as complicated as fungi. They're not as complicated as worms. They are not as complicated as human patients, right? So the thing for you isn't that it's complicated. The thing for you is that it just doesn't click for you, you know? And
yeah,
it, I mean, at least for me, your parents might have a different opinion, right? But for me, it's sufficient for you to say that just doesn't click for me. It just
okay,
doesn't appeal to me. And you know, in 10 years, it might be different, you know? But right now, that doesn't appeal to me as much as French and Chinese and medicine, you know? Now, I don't know. I'm also not for so remember, most of my story happens after I'm 24. And I didn't tell you this part, but you know, the reason that I waited until one of the reasons I waited until I was 24 to go back to college was a combination of a bureaucratic reason and a family trauma reason. Okay. And I'm just going to share with you. My family of origin is really problematic. I changed my name after I got married because I was worried that my parents were going to end up in jail. Okay. And I didn't want people to know if they ended up getting um, involved in a scandal and maybe going to jail, I didn't want to be associated with them. Okay. And I haven't spoken with them in many years. They haven't met my kids, right? They're pretty awful. Okay. And in the United States, the way the system works is that college students uh you know how much money they have to pay to go to college depends on how much money their parents have because you know it's expected that until a certain time you know parents will support you and that time is age 24. The bureaucracy of funding college in the United States assumes that you can't be independent from your parents financially until you're 24. And so I had to wait till I turned 24 to be able to go and in order to support myself. So why did I tell you that story? Well, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your parents are going to say because, you have if you're 14, you kind of have to listen to your parents,
I'm
And
16.
go ahead, Kenzie.
I'm 16. I think I'm in the last year of school. So education here in Egypt is so hard. So and going to medical school, it depends on my score. So because education here it's too hard, so I'm insecure about uh, what if I didn't get the score that will get me in medical school.
Um, do you remember I had a slide about failure?
Yeah.
It's possible. Um, I there's no way for me to evaluate the probability that you get into med school or you don't. Okay. Even if I even if I knew Egypt and I knew you, I still would have a hard time, I think, making confident probabilities, right? And I don't. And so think about it like this, right? In 20 years, those 20 years will go by no matter what happens. Okay. And in 20 years, you'll look back and either you did get in or you didn't. And the question is, and then what? If you got in, did you work hard and did you succeed? If you didn't get in, how did you respond to that setback? And what else did you do? And there's still 20 years ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if right, so when I tell the story, it's like, oh wow, you overcame all that stuff. But at the beginning, I hadn't overcome it yet. Right? I was a security guard making a very, very low wage, watching my friends succeed. And I didn't see what the outcome was going to be. I was just depressed. And then eventually I got over it. And eventually I had some success and I built upon it and I kept. Do you understand? So let me tell you a story. I told a friend of mine this story. Like this buddy of mine, he's a pathologist. He went straight to med school. He never experienced these kind of failures, And I told him my story. And uh, he said something that was so generous and so moving. He said he said, "Wow, that sounds like it was hard." And I said, "Yeah, I had a lot of second chances." And he said, "It doesn't sound like you had a lot of second chances. It sounds like you had a lot of opportunities to quit and you didn't take any of them."
Mhm.
So, Kenzie, I hope that you get into med school right away
Thank
and that you just have nothing but success after that. But if you don't get into med school, that's not the end of the story for you.
Thanks so much. Your presentation gave me hope. Thank you.
You're welcome. Best of luck to you.
All right, next one, Natasha.
Hi, I wanted to say thank you for that amazing presentation.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to ask, with all the people I'm sure you've interacted with,
Natasha, I don't know if you can hear me, but
Mm,
I'm not hearing your question. You
this,
you broke
and
up.
Natasha, do you want to type your question in the chat?
That's a good idea. And while Natasha is typing, I'm going to go back through chat. I'm going to scroll back through chat and see if there's any um
oh, I'm so sorry. I
Oh, that's okay.
I logged up for a bit. I wanted to ask, what advice would you have for somebody who's interested in both the sciences and the humanities?
Yeah. For somebody who's interested both in the sciences and the humanities, it really depends. Um, if you're in a country where, well, and I mean, this sounds like Egypt, but it also sounds like the United States,
Yeah,
where there's a lot of pressure to study practical, technical fields, right? Like you're much more likely to be, to have a secure career if you're an engineer or if you're a physician, than if you're a poet or, a historian or something. Um, and so I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that part of my decision to pursue science instead of humanities is because I came from a poor family who had no education and had no money and had no prospects. Um, I was drawn to science because I thought that I would be able to make a good living with that background rather than, in journalism or something. I don't know if that was true, but that's what I thought, and that's part of what appealed to me about science. Now, also, I hope you can tell I love science. So, like, I've seen students think, well, I want to be an engineer because I'll make a good living, right? But I hate calculus and I hate physics. Well, it's going to be a real bitch, getting through a training program to become an engineer if you hate physics and math, you know? And so you can't be it can't be just a calculated cynical plan to do it to get the most money. You have to find something that you love. Now, I don't know. I mean, my own kid, I told you my son is thinking about, I mean, he's going to start college in a year. And he's been, looking at colleges and looking at majors, and he's interested in sciencey stuff, but he's also interested in art stuff. I don't know what to tell him, It's like as he's making these decisions, as he's coming to points in his life where he has to make choices, I'll be happy to listen to him and give him advice, but I don't have an easy answer. I wish I did. I'm sorry. I hope that's helpful, Natasha.
It was, yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, I know it's kind of over time, but we're gonna take the last three questions. Um, Ria, you can go.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really learned a lot and it was really interesting. So my question is, what was your favorite organism to study?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, the worm is totally personal, but they're just so easy to handle. I told you that they so in genetics, when one individual can be the mother and the father, that's called like self-pollinating plants. But um, there are a few animals, uh, quite a few nematode worms that can self, right? That make sperm and egg, and they can reproduce asexually. And so that makes it so easy to keep them. All you have to do is feed them. You don't have to set up matings, right? So for every other, like for mice and for zebrafish and for fruit flies, you have to set up matings. You have to find males and find females and put them together and make sure that they lay eggs. But and it's really labor intensive. But for worms, you just take some worms and put them onto a fresh plate that's covered in bacteria for them to eat, and that's it, right? You can freeze the worms. You can put them in liquid nitrogen and keep them in liquid nitrogen for years or decades. And then when you thaw them, some of them won't be alive anymore, but some of them will come back to life. And so it's just so easy to take care of them. Um, but you can just right? They don't have any pigment, and so you can just look under the microscope and see every single cell. And every individual has the same 302 neurons And so and all the neurons are the same, and all the neurons have a name. And I never got to this level of expertise, but like my PhD advisor could, under a microscope, point to each not all of them, but most of them, and tell you which neuron it was. Okay. And it's because their nervous system is so simple and it's always the same, and you can just watch it develop right before your eyes. And they're so easy to do experiments on and so easy to keep. That really made it exciting because you could make progress really fast compared to zebrafish, that's for sure. So yeah, that's a totally personal answer, but well, and if you go on YouTube and type C. elegans, or just worm, like research worm, you'll see pictures of them, and they have this beautiful sinusoidal movement when they crawl. They're just fun to watch. Yeah, I loved worms. That's my answer.
Thank
It's a
you so
great question, though.
Have you ever worked with tardigrades?
I have never worked with tardigrades. No, I have not. But I mean, who doesn't love tardigrades? Come on. 2025, it's all about the tardigrade energy. Am I right, you guys?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right. Next up, Hannah, you can go.
Hi again. I hope I wasn't away for too long. Anyways, I want to start off with saying happy early birthday since you mentioned your birthday is in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And I also mentioned that I was like interested in robotics and like science and researching endometriosis, but let's focus on the sciencey part for now. Basically, endometriosis is like one of the under-researched diseases, I guess, in like gynecology. So what do you think about under-researched diseases, or like, I don't know what it's called in your specialty, but like what do you think about them in your field?
Um, well, I mean, in biomedical science generally,
Mhm.
there's two kinds of under-researched conditions that leap to mind. One is, well, three, okay. One is rare genetic disorders, but those are understudied because they're rare, right? If
Yeah.
there's, 2 people out of 8 billion who have a thing, well,
Yeah.
you might argue, just from an ethics point of view, that it's better to study something that, affects 80,000 people or 8 million people, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that's one. Another one is tropical diseases, right? Because most of the funding and most of the scientists who study disease don't encounter tropical diseases. But there's a disproportionate burden of, patients. And so that's something where, the rich countries could invest more. But the big one in the developed world, in the developing world, in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, women's issues, women's health problems are just understudied. There's so much gynecology and obstetrics, OBGYN stuff, reproductive physiology that just isn't understood still today in the 21st century. Endometriosis is a great example, but all kinds of reproductive physiology and endocrine physiology of women that just hasn't even been described yet. There's just so much basic work to do. Well, and that means that students like you who are young and coming up,
Yeah.
that's just an obvious challenge. And I hope that you and your entire generation just rushes in to fill that void. So thank you
Yeah.
for working on endometriosis.
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing, I was kind of hoping to contact you via email. If you want
Oh
to
yeah,
share your
sorry.
email.
So I should have put that on the slide. So here I'm typing my email into the chat. It's just howell@psu.edu. I
Okay,
would
yeah,
love
thank
to
you.
hear if every single one of you sent me an email, I couldn't be happier. I would love to hear from all of you.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely contact you. I'll definitely contact you.
Yeah, so Mahmoud here just said, um, can you help me to tell my story? Sure, I'm happy to help.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for putting your email in the chat because I know a lot of students would love to like reach out to you later too.
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I'm actually gonna take one last question from Roghad. You can go.
I want to ask, like, to specialize in multiple fields doesn't make your mind like scattered, and it's better to focus on one major.
Well, like an old teacher of mine said, you're going to live a long time, right? Take a close look at me. I'm no longer 18 years old. Right? And so you can't do everything at once, you know? You have to like, especially when you're in college, you have to focus, and that's okay. But don't forget how to read, you know? Um, in the United States, we have public libraries that, in some communities are really strong institutions. And, you get a card that identifies you that you can use to borrow books, and so we say like, get a library card, right? I'm sure you've heard people talk about lifelong learning. Well, like I didn't learn French all at once. I didn't learn Japanese all at once. I didn't learn neuroscience all at once. You've got time. Am I answering the question that you're asking? I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's hard to remember this when you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, which I guess is the ages you guys are, right? It's hard to remember. But there's a lot of time ahead of you. You don't have to do everything all at once. Um, just never stop learning.
Mhm.
Never. If you plan to stop learning, then you're in a hurry, okay? But if you never plan to stop learning, you've got time.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Actually, Mahogany, do you want to go for a quick question before we end the session today?
Yeah, one more question. Where's Mahogany?
Barbie, yeah, so actually, I wanted to like ask you a question regarding your research with yeast.
Uh-huh.
So, is there anything that you discovered, like something that was like mind-blowing that you actually didn't think was possible until you did that research?
Um, Bargavi sounds like mahogany. So what was the most mind-blowing thing that I personally so don't forget, I was an undergraduate. I was a college student. So this was research that I was doing part-time. It was the first research I ever did, and so I was learning everything. And I did it for like 3 whole years. But like the first 2 years, I accomplished very little because I was learning. And then, in my last year, I got pretty productive. So having said that, let's see, what was the most surprising or the most interesting? Um, we started to, so again, I wish I could draw. So I'm just going to use my hands. So let's imagine that this is the membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum, okay? And so this is the cytoplasm, and so this is where out here is where the ribosomes are on the rough ER. And so then in here, this is the lumen of the ER. Okay. And what I studied is, okay, so here's the membrane. And so ribosomes, rough ER is covered in ribosomes, right? And so the ribosomes are making proteins, and those proteins get put through the membrane. And the proteins, when they come all the way through, they will fold, and then they might be secreted. Okay. Well, and it turns out that what I was looking at was what I was looking at was when they come through from the ribosome and then they fold in here. Um, if they don't fold, what happens? Because protein misfolding is really important in a lot of diseases, right? I mean, that's the basis of Alzheimer's disease. That's the basis of all of the neurodegenerative disorders. That's the basis of cystic fibrosis. What happens if they don't fold? Okay. And I studied the protein that's on the inside that helps them to fold. And then as I was finishing my honors thesis, I and some other people in the lab and some people in other labs started to get some evidence that when proteins that don't make it all the way through, that don't fold, that they get sent back to the cytoplasm. And then they're degraded in the cytoplasm because there's no way to break them down inside the ER lumen. They have to go back across the membrane um, in order to be degraded. Okay. And there was just the first hints that we were observing that. Okay. And some people weren't convinced, and we had no idea how it was happening, but it looked like that was going on. And then I went to, and then I left. I finished my honors thesis, which was on the stuff that was happening on the inside. And I left and I went to grad school. And then I got a job, and then I taught for 10 years. And then the guy that I worked for as an undergrad, who I was still in touch with from time to time, he was a great mentor to me. Jeff Brodsky, I owe him so much. Well, one time somebody else invited him to come to Penn State to give a talk about what he'd been doing in those 20 years. I mean, I talked to him about his kids and I talked to him about my kids. I didn't really talk to him so much about the science. I mean, at a very superficial level. And so he gave a talk, a very detailed talk about this retrograde transmission that leads to, which is the thing that he'd spent most of his career on in the 20 years since then. And he had this beautiful story, and explained it. I'm not quite, I mean, there's still some questions, but like all of these details, he really worked it out, and other people too in the field. Well, and it was such a thrill to watch that talk and see this like idea that we had 20 years before after 20 years of lots of people working on it really hard for a long time, getting some really interesting answers. That was so satisfying. Well, and it was just such a touching thing when he was like, by the way, James Howell, who's in your department now, started working on this as an honors thesis 20 years ago, and like he kind of exaggerated my importance to that project. But yeah, I was there. And so yeah, that was something that was it took 20 years, but that was the most exciting thing that I saw. I hope that answers your question,
Yeah, thank
Gavi.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Howell, for your great presentation and also for taking extra time to answer all the students' questions.
You are welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and also, your stories and your insights. So yeah.
Yeah, so I hope to hear from any of you, in English, en français, or in español roto. それから Nihongo demo. But actually, no, English. Please use English. Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you and answer more questions. All right. So have a great summer, you guys. Whatever is left of it for you. We only have a few weeks left, but I really enjoyed talking to you all today, and hope to hear from you again. And best of luck to all of you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
See ya.
See ya. Bye. Okay, everyone, please stay behind. We have a few important announcements about our summer camp. So first of all, tomorrow is going to be our last session of our summer camp, the entire summer camp. So I just can't believe I'm really proud of everyone for making it this far into our session 7. And I'm just really proud of y'all submitting your projects, attending sessions, and asking awesome questions. So keep it up for our last guest speaker session tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to have another professor who's going to talk about her research in biology and biochemistry. So be sure to join on time tomorrow from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. EST. And we'll have a short celebration and a ceremony at the end of our session tomorrow. So make sure to stay behind and we'll celebrate everyone's achievements in our summer camp. And another thing for your projects, you do have your Spotify project that's going to be due tomorrow at midnight, 11:59 EST. So be sure to submit your Spotify episode by tomorrow. And then for any of session that you missed, be sure to watch the recordings posted on YouTube and also completing your reflection forms by tomorrow. If you need an extension or if you're struggling any emergencies, please email me and I will see if I can give you an extension for your projects or your forms. But please make sure to email me or DM in Slack. And then another thing for completion and getting your certificate. there's a end of program completion survey that's going to be posted by the end of the session tomorrow. So you have to complete the survey in order to complete the entire summer camp. And then you have time until next Sunday to complete this survey and then get your certificate. For your certificate, it's going to be emailed to you with a PDF attachment. So you can use that for submission to other program, for school, resume, or for college apps. But that will be not until next week. So we get it earliest next week. And then we'll keep you all posted about your certificate and your completions. And for all the sessions that you attended, you will get service hours. So 1 hour for each session that you attended live, not watching the recording, but you have to attend it live. And then it will be shown on your certificate. You can submit that for your volunteer hours for school. You can count it towards service hours or anything related to high school, college, or anything for that. For recommendation letters, if you want to request for a letter, you can email us, and then it's in our hand deciding whether we'll write one for you or not. We'll be writing max 5 letters for students who are consistently active in sessions and then who are also respectful to guest speakers. So if you're interested in getting a letter, please reach out to us, and then we'll let you know if we can write one for you. Okay, so that's pretty much all for the updates. If you have any other questions about the summer camp, you can stay behind. But if you don't, you're free to go, and I will see you all tomorrow.